Hello and welcome back to State of Charge. Today we're going to be reviewing the Wallbox Pulsar Plus electric vehicle charging station. I just received this guy in the mail, haven't even opened up the box yet. We're going to do that next, open it up, take a look at exactly what comes in the unit, and then talk about installation before we go into the full review. But first, I just want to clear up one thing. I know some of my loyal followers might be thinking to themselves, hey, wait a minute, Tom. You just did the Pulsar Plus review not more than a couple of months ago. Are you starting to lose it? And as a matter of fact, it's right on the wall behind you. So yeah, maybe you are losing it. Don't worry. Now I might be losing it, but I'm still holding things together enough to know what I'm doing here in the garage. This is the Wallbox Pulsar Plus 48. That on the wall that I previously reviewed is the Wallbox Pulsar Plus 40. That's a 40 amp charging station that can deliver up to 9.6 kilowatt to an electric vehicle. This is a 48 amp unit that can deliver up to 11.5 kilowatts. So it's a little bit higher powered. Other than that, it's mostly the same. But we are going to talk about what differences it does have, and then also maybe talk about why somebody might elect to buy the Pulsar Plus 40 over the 48 and vice versa. We'll try to help you find the unit that suits your needs best. But first, don't forget, click that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming content here on State of Charge. So let's open this guy up and see what's inside. The other way around. Okay. Pulsar Plus EV charger. All right, I believe this is the cable management system. Yep, that's where it was in the last unit. Here's the mounting hardware. Get rid of these boxes. Put this up. This is just boxes. Here's the installation guide. Let me see. First, this comes out. This lifts up. All right, that's it. Okay. Here we go. As you can see, really compact unit. I think it's a little under 8 inches by 8 inches by about 3.5 inches, if I recall correctly from the last Pulsar Plus that we reviewed. Let's see what we have in here. This is the installation guide. It's got a 25-foot cable, which is pretty much as long a cable as you're going to get on any electric vehicle charging equipment. I actually think that that's, by code, the longest you're allowed to have. As I noted in the last review we did, the connector has a good feel to it. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same connector as the previous one. I'm going to have to compare them. This one actually doesn't feel quite the same as the one that we reviewed on the last Pulsar Plus. It doesn't feel as rubberized. Let me see. And it's not. Okay. I don't like this new connector. It's not as good as the previous one. I noted on the previous one that it has a nice rubberized grip. It just feels good in your hand. And even the tab to release the connector felt nice and solid. You could see it's a totally different design. And this is more of a plasticky connector. It's all plastic. There's a little bit of like a rough surface here so that it doesn't slip out of your hand. But one of the things I always like to comment on is I like when the connector feels good in your hand. It doesn't feel like you're going to drop it or it's going to slip out. And the Pulsar Plus 40 that we reviewed last time, this was one of my favorite connectors, actually. I really like this connector. I don't like this new one as much. It doesn't feel as high quality. It doesn't feel as good in my hand. So that's a negative right out of the box. I'm not happy that Wallbox changed connectors. I wonder if they've changed them on all the products now. I have to ask them. This is obviously a less expensive connector to make than this one. This is a higher quality connector. I like it better. Don't like the move that they did. Okay, so that's it for that connector. And the unit's the same. Pretty much the dimensions, I believe, are exactly the same. I'm going to take a look at them. Here's your mounting hardware. There are 4 screws and drywall anchors. It's always best to try to attach your electric vehicle charging equipment directly to a stud in the wall, because these are heavy units. The cable's going to be pulled. You don't want it to over time loosen up and come off the wall. So if you can, screw it directly into a stud. If you can't, make sure that you use the drywall anchors properly and you have a nice tight fitting so that the unit is securely mounted to the wall. It also comes with this screw-in plug, which I don't think you use for the hardwired units. I think this is only used in the Pulsar Plus plug-in versions, which, speaking of which, you notice there's no plug dangling from this. When we did the review of the Pulsar Plus 40, there is this NEMA 1450 plug that comes out of the unit where you plug it in. The Pulsar Plus 48 must be hardwired if you want it to deliver the full 48 amps. You can't use it as a plug-in version. Now, if you did want to derate it, which you can, down to 40 amps, you could then attach a NEMA 1450 plug and plug it in like I have this unit done. But then what's the point of getting the 48 amp unit if you're only going to use it to charge at 40 amps? So this guy, as with all 48 amp electric vehicle charging equipment, like the Tesla wall connector I have here on the wall, you notice this is hardwired down there. All 48 amp electric vehicle charging equipment must be directly hardwired. You can't use the plug. If you want to have a plug-in electric vehicle charging station, you need to get one that's 40 amps or less. And finally, it comes with the installation guide, which shows you exactly how to install it. A nice set of stickers where you can put the sticker on your fuse panel so you know exactly what circuit the charging station is on, and this plastic remote connector holster, which we'll take a little look at later. This is basically how it works. The connector locks in, and you can also loop the cable around the top of it here to manage the cable of your charging station. Installing the Wallbox Pulsar Plus is really simple. But first, I'd like to stress, always hire a qualified licensed electrician to install your electric vehicle charging equipment. This isn't stuff for weekend warriors. I know it's not really difficult to do, but the reason why you want to make certain everything is really done properly and professionally is because electric vehicle charging equipment isn't like most other electrical equipment in your house. You use it for many hours a day, and it's pulling very high amount of electricity, more so than almost anything else in your house, especially a powerful 48 amp unit like this. It will probably be drawing more current than anything else in your house. And it does that for many continuous hours and quite often overnight when you're sleeping. So you really don't want to have any problems with your electric vehicle charging equipment. Therefore, it really makes sense. Pay a few extra bucks, have a qualified electrician install it. So let's go over really quickly how this mounts to the wall. Now, you'd need to pull a 60 amp circuit, your electrician will know that, to deliver a continuous load of 48 amps. And the wall box has a mounting bracket on the back. You remove these two screws here, very small screws. Once they're off, the mounting bracket comes off. Here it is, and this basically just gets hung on the wall, and then the unit snaps in, and then you reattach the two small screws on the bottom, very simply. But when you mount this on your wall, you notice there's a couple of holes here. You could choose whichever one you want. You really only need two screws. I said earlier they give you 4 screws. 2 are really for this mounting bracket, and 2 are for the connector holster. There's 2 screws in there. The longer ones, the 2-inch screws, you'd probably want to use for the main unit, and the 1.5-inch screws for the connector holster. I mean, you could add more screws if you want. There's actually 4 different openings to add up to 4 screws if you'd like to. And as far as powering the unit, you can either come in from the bottom here, as I did on the Tesla wall connector. You could see it's an exterior conduit that comes outside of the wall and goes into the bottom of the unit. Or you can feed it through the back. That's a cleaner installation. If you have the opportunity to pull the wires through the wall and just mount this, it's a little bit cleaner. I like it a little bit nicer. I did this here because I'm constantly moving this equipment around, and that's up to you. It really doesn't matter, but you can come in through the back or from the bottom, and it really doesn't matter either way you do it. Now, as far as mounting the connector holster, you could do that anywhere. You could put it, as I did, right next to the unit if you'd like, or you could do it on a far wall and make it easier. Maybe you pull in your garage and it's right where the charge port is, so you just pull the connector off the wall and pop it in, and then you could mount the wall box pretty much anywhere in the garage. It doesn't have to be right where you're going to put the connector holster. That's one of the advantages of having a remote connector holster. You could basically put it wherever you'd like to. Up next, it's the cable deep freeze test for the Pulsar Plus. In this commercial ice cream freezer, I put the Pulsar Plus last night. So it's been in there about 13 or 14 hours now. This isn't any freezer. This is a commercial ice cream freezer, and it gets down way below 0 Fahrenheit. Matter of fact, it usually has the chargers somewhere at around -10 and -15 degrees. So we're going to first take the temperature to see just how cold it is. Then we're going to pull the Pulsar Plus out and see how well the cable performs. Now, we do this to simulate if you had your Pulsar Plus outside overnight in the winter and it was really cold. We want to see how well the cable bends when it's really cold. Now, one thing I want to note, the 40 amp Pulsar Plus failed the cable deep freeze test. The cable performed very poorly, and the cable on the Pulsar Plus 48 is much thicker than the one on the Pulsar Plus 40. So we're expecting this to perform even worse unless Wallbox realize that they have a problem with cold weather pliability and improve the cable. That would be fantastic if we pull this out and it bends relatively easily, like the ChargePoint Home Flex, which has really been the best cable we've tested so far for cold weather. But just judging on the feel of the jacket of that cable, I don't think it's going to perform well, but let's see. First, we'll see how cold it is in there. -5 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's pretty cold in there. Now let's see how she does. Okay, I can tell already it's not going to be a good result. See how stiff that is? Let me unravel this. We ravel the cables up in tight loops because then we like to see how well they'll unravel and then ravel up in big, large loops like we'd like to hang it around the cable management. Put this on the wall here. Okay, now, see that? That's not what you want to see. It's fighting me. Let me see if I can even unravel it enough. No, it's not even worth it. This is frozen and it's really stiff. I mean, yeah. That's a big fail on the cable deep freeze test. It's not unusual for cables to be frozen like this, and that's why we do this test. This is important for people that live in really cold weather areas that put their charging stations outside. While the Wallbox does a lot of things great, it does not have a good cable for cold weather applications. And for that reason, we probably wouldn't recommend it for people that live in the northern states or Canada and are going to install the Pulsar Plus outdoors. So now let's take a quick look at some of the prime competitors for the Wallbox Pulsar Plus 48. On my right, I have the Tesla wall connector. That's a Gen 3 wall connector. I have the Wallbox 40 plug-in unit, but I have this up here just so you could take a look at the size comparison to some of the other units. Here's the ChargePoint Home Flex and also the NLX JuiceBox 48. All of these units can deliver 48 amps, and the NLX JuiceBox, the ChargePoint Home, and the Wallbox Pulsar Plus 48 are all very similarly priced. I think there's maybe a $20 difference amongst them. Now, the Tesla wall connector is considerably less. It's about $200 less than these other units are. It really is made just for Tesla vehicles because it has the proprietary Tesla connector. All of these other units use the J1772 connector that all other electric vehicles in North America use other than Tesla. But you can charge Tesla vehicles with these other charging stations like the Pulsar Plus. That's because with every Tesla car, Tesla gives their customers one of these. It's a J1772 to Tesla adapter. So you'd put this on your Pulsar Plus and you could plug in your Tesla. So the Wallbox Pulsar Plus, as well as these other charging stations, can charge Teslas just fine. However, if you have a Tesla, for daily charging, I'm probably going to say you want to go with a proprietary Tesla connector, either the Tesla mobile connector or the Tesla wall connector, because just adding this for daily charging probably isn't the best way to go. You can use it on the run when you're in public or on occasion, but for daily charging, it's always best to go right from the connector to the car and not have some kind of adapter or connector in the middle of it. So anyway, let's take a look at these units really quickly. I said the prices are just about the same other than the Tesla wall connector. Why might you choose one over the other? Well, the NLX Juice Bus probably has the most smart charging features of any of these charging stations. Now, they're all smart chargers, except Tesla is a Wi-Fi enabled smart charger, but Tesla hasn't enabled the Wi-Fi options yet for some reason. It's been on the market for well over a year, and they keep promising that these functions are going to come, but they're not available yet. All of these units, with the exception of the ChargePoint Home Flex, can load share. So they can share power from one circuit to multiple units. That's could be important down the road if you get two EVs and you just want to have one circuit powering two cars. The Wallbox Pulsar Plus, the NLX Juice Box, and the Tesla wall connector can all have multiple units set up on one circuit and it won't overload the circuit. So there's an advantage of those stations over the ChargePoint Home Flex. Now the ChargePoint Home Flex has, in my opinion, the best connector. The old Wallbox actually had a really good connector too. I don't know why they downgraded it with this, but they did. I like the feel of this. I think it's the best quality connector, and the ChargePoint Home Flex also has, by far, the best cable of any of these charging stations. It's actually the best cable of any charging station we've tested here in our cable deep freeze test. Now, that might not matter to you if you live in sunny Southern California or Texas or something, but if you live in a northern state or Canada, this cable remains the most pliable of any cable we've ever tested when we do our deep freeze test. It really bends easily. It can return to large loops. It doesn't stay tightly compressed as you saw when we did the deep freeze test on the Pulsar Plus. So that's a consideration. If you're going to mount it outside, if you live in a cold area, this might be the best choice for you. But the Wallbox Pulsar Plus is an outstanding choice all around charging station. It's one of our top rated charging stations. At least the 40 was. The 48, I see no reason why it's not going to be either. It's a little bit more expensive, $50 more than the 40 amp, but you have more power. And for the people that want that extra couple of kilowatts, you can get it with this, and it's a well-made unit, Wi-Fi enabled, has all the smart charging features. So in that regards, it's totally competitive with these other units, and that's why it's rated at the top of our list for high-powered electric vehicle charging stations. Both the Pulsar Plus 40 and 48 are Wi-Fi and Bluetooth enabled smart chargers. So what does that mean? Do you really need a smart charger? Well, you really don't need one. Regular chargers or dumb chargers simply plug in and charge your car. That's it. They don't communicate with an app. You can't set them to do any other additional features. But with smart chargers, you can. Now, the Pulsar Plus, as I mentioned, is Wi-Fi and Bluetooth enabled. It comes with an app that you download, and with that, you can view your charging sessions. You could start and stop a charging session. You could look at your past charging sessions and see how much energy the car took in. It has OTA updates, so Wallbox can send over-the-air updates to improve or enable new features with the Pulsar Plus. And as I mentioned earlier, it does power sharing. So it can intelligently balance the amount of power that goes to multiple units so that you don't overload a circuit. Now that might be useful if you become a 2 EV family one day and you want to install 2 wall boxes. You can just have one circuit that powers both of them, save the expense of adding an additional circuit. In some cases, people don't have the capacity to add a second circuit. So you could do that. But it even becomes more helpful in multifamily dwellings. This is basically, it's a residential charging station, but it can also be used in commercial applications. Now imagine a big apartment complex that has dozens of these installed. The owners won't have to install a dedicated 60 amp circuit for each one. They can have multiple units on a single circuit, and then the units will communicate with each other to make sure they don't overload the circuit. And it's not available yet, but what Wallbox is going to be doing is allow multiple accounts. So you could, if you lived in an apartment complex, you'd have your own account. And let's say there's 20 other people that live there, you would be able to be billed individually for the electric that you use just on your vehicle. So the property management doesn't have to try to figure out, well, who used what, how much electricity. Everybody can have their own account that you need to have in order to be able to use the units, and you only get billed for what you use. So that is definitely a useful feature to have. These are also OCPP compliant smart charging stations, and that allows them to participate in utility demand response programs. They're not that popular just yet in the US. California has them. They're sprinkled around the country. A few other states have some utility demand response programs, but this will eventually be very commonplace. It's where you give your utility the ability to control your charging station. And if the grid is under stress, if there's a possibility of a blackout or a brownout, it can throttle back or even shut off your charging until the grid has added capacity. Now you could always override it if you really needed to charge. You'll get like a text message that says, look, we'd like to shut your charging off for a couple of hours, and you could override it and say, no, I need to charge now. Or you could say, sure, I don't need it to be charged till 8 o'clock in the morning, and now it's 10 o'clock at night. As long as you charge me up by 8 a.m., that's fine. So the Wallbox Pulsar Plus can participate in utility demand response programs. There aren't too many other charging stations that can. They're out there. The NLX Juice Box, for instance, is one of the ones that's the most popular currently on the market participating in demand response programs. Pulsar Plus is also Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant compatible. So if you have a smart home with those devices, you can pair it with your Pulsar Plus and say things like, Wallbox, start charging my car, or stop charging my car, how much energy have I added, things like that. It's a useful feature if you live in a smart connected home. I don't know how many people are really going to be in that position today to really care about asking Alexa how much energy they added to their car, but hey, it's a future looking option, and it's pretty cool. The Pulsar Plus 40 as well as the 48 also has a NEMA 4 enclosure. Now that's better than what most charging stations have. I think it's most common that the charging stations are rated at NEMA 3, which is fine for outdoor use, but some units are NEMA 4 rated, and that gives you an added level of protection against blowing rain and snow. It's probably better to consider a NEMA 4 rated charging station if you're going to mount it outdoors and you live in an area that gets frequent driving rainstorms or snowstorms. So we did a little test to make sure that the NEMA 4 rating really holds up. A few months back when I tested the Pulsar Plus 40, I took it outside and put it under the test of a hose, where I sprayed it with a hose for about 15 minutes at all the angles to try to get water to penetrate the unit, and it didn't. It passed the test just fine. It's a little cold outside now. Winter is upon us, and it's below freezing today, so I really couldn't do that outside. So instead, I figured we'd do a little bit of a different test, and we'll do the dunk test. Now, NEMA 4 ratings really aren't meant to submerge an item. That would be a little bit of a higher rating, but if you just submerge it really quickly, that kind of simulates a real soaking, driving rainstorm. So let's dunk this guy, and then I'll open her up and see if any water got in the unit. hold it underwater for a little bit. It wants to come out. There it goes. All right, that's pretty good. Now let's open her up and we'll see if any water got inside the enclosure. All righty, so let's dry it off a little bit. And now we'll open her up. To open up the inside of the unit, you first have to remove this screw here on the front that removes the cover that's around the perimeter of the body. It doesn't really open anything up yet, it's just a decorative cover. Now you have to remove these 4 screws here. That really opens up the unit. I'm going to go to time lapse because you don't want to watch me opening up these 4 screws. Has a nice tight seal. Oh, but I didn't remove one all the way. Okay, so, and now there is, okay, let's see here. There is no water whatsoever on the inside. You can see water around the rim, but that's where the gasket is. I'll zoom in on it so you could take a look for yourself, but there's no water intrusion whatsoever inside the unit. I'm not going to go over how to download and set up the app because that could take an entire video in itself. And quite honestly, there's a few videos online that do that pretty well. And Wallbox also has really good step-by-step instructions on how to do that. So let's take a quick look at the app here. Here's the main screen of the app, and this is where you control it. If you wanted to lock your charger, you'd press that lock button there, and now the yellow circle on my Wallbox has lit up. If you want to schedule charging, you press this here. It defaults to all 7 days of the week. So let's say you wanted to set up a schedule for weekdays. You would turn off Friday and Saturday. You can see they're gray now. Just so you know, it defaults to all the days. And then you would change the hours by scrolling this, the minutes by scrolling here. You would accept the start time, then you'd hit the end time, do the same thing, and set up your schedule. You could set up multiple schedules for different days of the week. That would be fine. Down here we have some statistics on the charging sessions. You want to view your statistics, take a look at what we have here. It shows the days of the month and when you charged, how many kilowatt hours you took on each session. If you want to do this by time, you press this button up here and it shows you how many hours you were plugged in. Well, let's go back to energy and let's go to sessions. This shows all the sessions that you've had in the last month or the dates that you had set up. You can change that for a shorter window or a bigger window, and it shows you the time you plugged in, how many kilowatt hours you took in, how long you charged for, and what it cost you. Now that cost is based on what you set up when you initially configure your app. You can enter what you pay per kilowatt hour. Okay, so we have charging sessions. We have the scheduled timer, the lock feature. That's the basic operations of the app. Now there's some more things you can do in the settings here, but like I said, this could be an entire video just showing on that. I just wanted to give you an overview of how the Wallbox Pulsar Plus app works. Well, that's it for the review. All that's left is our ratings and final thoughts. As always, we start off with the Charger Rater, which is a point-based system that has 5 separate categories. We then take the Charger Rater score and average it in with my own personal score to come up with the final score. So let's take a look at the Charger Rater now. The first category is cost and value. Because the Pulsar Plus 48 cost $699, it's quite expensive. It takes a hit in that category and ends up with only 11 points. The next category, power and weatherproofing rating, finishes up with a total of 20 points. In construction and durability, it ends up with 13 points. The smart, non-smart section fares well, and it gets 24 points. Now for safety certification and warranty, it ends up with 17 points because it is safety certified and does have a nice 3-year warranty. That ends up with a grand total of 85 points. When we convert that to a 5-star rating, it ends up with 4.25 stars. I'm then going to average in my own personal rating. I'm giving the Pulsar Plus 48 4.75 stars, making the final score 4.5 stars out of 5. A very good score for a very good electric vehicle charging station. Now, do you need the Pulsar Plus 48 as opposed to the Pulsar Plus 40? Probably not. That's my own personal opinion. I like the Pulsar Plus 40 slightly more. It costs $50 less, $649 compared to $699. It comes with a plug, which means it's easily movable. And this is a small unit. You can take this with you if you needed to. And if there's ever a problem and you have to send it back for warranty, you just unplug the pluggable unit, put it in a box and ship it back. You don't have to have an electrician come and unhook it. I'm not sure that you get enough value out of those extra between 9.6 kilowatts, which is what the 40 amp unit delivers, and 11.5, which is what the 48 amp unit delivers. Either one, your EV is going to be fully charged by morning. If you come home at night and plug it in, you get a little bit faster per hour. The Pulsar Plus 40 will charge somewhere between 24 and say 35 miles of range per hour. And the Pulsar Plus 48 should give you somewhere between 28 and 45 miles of range per hour. Now that's highly dependent on how efficient your electric vehicle is. If you have an electric vehicle that's very efficient and it gets more miles per kilowatt hour, you're going to be at the higher end of that range that you get added per hour. But as I said, it really depends on how efficient your electric vehicle is. The unit can only deliver the power, then it's up to the EV to make the most of it. Both units come with a robust 3-year warranty. They both have 25-foot long cables. I'm a little disappointed that Wallbox decided to change the connector. The new connector is not as good as the old connector was, so that's a little disappointing. It's not bad, but I really liked the connector that we got on the Wallbox Pulsar Plus 40. It was really rubberized, nice grip, and just an overall better and felt like it's a better made connector. Maybe they're saving a few dollars, but I don't like it. The cable is much thicker on the 48, as you might expect it would be because it's delivering more amperage, but it was really a bear to deal with in cold weather. The Pulsar Plus 40 didn't do that well in cold weather either, the cable, but since it was thinner, it was easy to bend. When you get these really thick cables, when they get frozen and they're not rubberized, they're almost impossible to bend. So we had to ding it on that, and the fact that it's a $700 unit, now that is probably about the average price for a high-end 48 amp electric vehicle charging station, it still is very expensive, and we like to focus on cost when we do our ratings. That's important. We think that charging stations should be affordable for people. So that's some of the things that pulled down the rating, but still 4.5 stars out of 5 is an excellent rating, and it's one of the reasons why the Wallbox Pulsar Plus 40 and 48 are both highly recommended from State of Charge. They're two of our best charging stations that we've reviewed so far, and we definitely recommend them if you're in the market for a high-end smart charger. These are two of the best out there. We put them right up with the NLX Juice Box and the ChargePoint Home Flex. They're probably the top 3 48 amp smart chargers that you can get today. So that's it for our review. Please don't forget, click that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming content here on State of Charge.